Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm one of your hosts, Ice Dawson, cannabis socialite.
And I am Dashita Dawson, the weed head.
Hi, sis. Hey, sis.
Hey, sis. On today's episode of She Blaze, Cookies Dispensary is having drive-bys. Florida medical marijuana market is facing some policy issues, and we're giving how-tos on protecting your cannabis business.
Whoop, whoop. Well, as always, we have a very, very exciting episode. There's a lot going on in cannabis, but let's kick things off with our high of the week. And my high of the week is still riding high from last week, y'all. I got new flower strains, and that means new ways to play with terpenes and cannabinoids, Smarties, cake mix, and white truffle with a little bit of Jack Herrera. Throw in some Bubba Kush hemp, and we have got a cocktail honey that you can mix and match for day and for night. I am really, really loving for the Limonene and the Caryophyllene, which by the way, is what I use primarily for mood plus anti-inflammatory combo is amazing.
That sounds hot. Well, you smoking strong. So my high of the week is not really a happy high of the week. It is a sad high of the week because we have unfortunately lost a pioneer within the cannabis industry, and that is Frenchy Cannoli. And the first time I've even heard of the name was through the Dank Duchess, who is a world-renowned hash maker and cultivator. She was trained exclusively under him as an apprentice. And so we actually also got his hash at MJ BizCon 2019. David, shout out to David Kelman. He did get that in the bag. And so we do have personal experience there too. So I just want to, send my condolences to the family because we don't know what happened, and I won't speculate, but I will say that that was a sad moment for the cannabis industry, and it would not feel right to always talk about concentrates and hash and not actually give my props to this man.
Listen, Frenchy Cannoli definitely was a legend in the space, especially if you are a person who loves concentrates. His hash was amazing. Yes. I remember that. I mean, it was memorable. I was just reaching out to Duchess, who is a good friend and family. Like, she's our family, and making sure she's okay because he is her family. And the way that anything works in the world of art and cannabis, which as a hash maker, you're both, who you do your apprenticeship with is important. And she was his first apprentice. So wow. That's also why it's just important to kind of call that out. But RIP to Frenchy. It's definitely sad. And I'm just I don't know. I guess I'm a little taken aback. Life's so short. You just got to celebrate where you can, and also give love when you can. I had the opportunity to meet Frenchy during MJ BizCon after party, and I'm not just I'm not a starstruck person. So of course, initially I was like, all right, he over there, but you get a one conversation, and he's just very, very pleasant and very, 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 very lit always with all of the cannabis. But sometimes now I look back and I wish I had been a little bit more like, I gotta get my picture with Frenchy, because I was a little jealous seeing how many people across the industry showing their pics with Frenchy. But I did smoke the hash, so
we have had Frenchy hash, and it is one of a kind, just like the Duchess's hash is one of a kind. And it took a lot, but cannabis is crazy. That's how we started off our week. But we got to get into our hot topics because these things are crazier, you guys. So let's get into hot topic number 1, which is about dispensaries are being under attack. Literally like cops and robbers shoot them up style. So we want to talk about Oklahoma exclusively, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the markets because this is a trend we're seeing everywhere, especially during these COVID-y times. And Oklahoma, which from the start, everybody needs to know it is a carry state, open to carry, licensed medical marijuanas must have it. But the people got it too. And why this is so interesting is because in March, there was a man who actually, got shot and killed at a dispensary because of many reasons we don't know because he's dead. So ultimately, what happened was there was a 24-hour cannabis dispensary in Oklahoma City. Basically, the man was asked to leave and he was refused service. He was acting all kind of crazy and stuff like that. And he left. He comes back. And they say he tries to attack the security guard with a knife. And, the security guard had to secure the property. And unfortunately, this man lost his life. But we're also seeing this at Cookies, y'all. Cookies, okay, has the Oklahoma City dispensary. It is, a multi-state operator. And right now, in June, it was reported that they were having like this concert and it was real lit. And all of a sudden, the fights break out, shots happen. Someone ended up shot down. Well, this week, okay, according to the Instagram, Cookies had got shot up by a drive-by.
So when you're saying Cookies is having drive-bys, it is not drive-by to pick up your weed, y'all, through the window. It's a drive-by for real. That's crazy. But, something is going on right now in the industry. Oklahoma is definitely having an issue. And you mentioned it. It's a right to carry firearm state. Like when you first said it, I was like, it's a right to carry cannabis state. If you have a medical card, it is that too. But it's a right to carry firearm state. And so there's everybody really armed and quote unquote ready. And we've seen some incidents as a result of that. And it's unfortunate. But it also isn't just cannabis that's happening and it's not just Oklahoma. We're seeing that same issue in Portland. I'm dealing with it with the city of Portland as a real issue, something that we've talked about with city council and the mayor. Our cannabis policy oversight team has been talking about robberies, armed robberies. It has spiked, to your point, during COVID-y times, to numbers that the city has never seen before. And we're trying to figure out why, honestly, and also figure out mechanisms to protect businesses better. The first would be probably not having so much cash on hand, right? These are cash only businesses, so they're not protected in general in that regard. But there's also obviously other industries that have a similar thing. The corner stores and bodegas are usually higher in cash, and liquor stores as well. And yeah, they also are potentially targeted when times are uncertain, right? And there aren't as much police authority out, supposedly. But it is cannabis businesses that have been dealing with it the most that I've been seeing. Ridiculous numbers. And I don't know if it's because whether you get the merchandise or the cash, it's still going to be money in your hand. And that is a concern. I haven't figured out as a regulator how we resolve that. I'm not sure that there are things the regulator can do, because then it starts getting into the world of enforcement. But I would say this: there are things in the hood growing up that we used to do to make sure that establishments didn't get robbed, didn't get targeted. In addition to just having the neighborhood know what's up, right? And being able to protect mom and pop stores and the like. It's also things like the walk-up window, like after 9 p.m., after it gets dark, now you can't get in. You just got to come up to a window, bulletproof, right?
Right.
Put your stuff in and turn around, get your things. That might be a possibility here, because it seems like things are happening once folks get on premise.
Right. Things are definitely happening when people get on premise, but there's a part of me that does feel like, this whole police abolish and stuff. And how does it always tie into cannabis? Everything ties into cannabis, you guys, but that doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, sometimes the police come after the issue. So this whole you can't protect after the incident happened. Okay. Right. And so there does have to be a better in the moment plan of action, because it seems like the police are getting to the place after everything has gone down, and all they can do is investigate.
Listen, you ain't lying, because that is what we're having in the city of Portland, and it's getting called out pretty regularly. They're really, really slow to respond. And some may say, as there are certain places, particularly city of Portland, where the cannabis tax revenue used to go to the police bureau, and some of that got divested and moved into community reinvestment, that all of a sudden now things are not being responded to as well. Then there's also the belief that some of these law enforcement officers did not agree with legalization to begin with, and so they don't treat it as a serious of an issue. In states like Oklahoma, Oregon, those are the places that I actually do get concerned that law enforcement has too much of a negative perspective, because they see the lowest 5% of the population. That's real talk, who they deal with the most. And so to me, it means that they are with a certain lens when they think about cannabis. And as a result, you're thinking to yourself, oh, they probably deserve what they got, or they're drug dealers anyway. When drug dealers are robbing each other, it's just criminals robbing criminals. It just, to me, there's a lot of narrative still on the government side, and a lot of re-education and competency that needs to be built for law enforcement specifically.
Okay, for facts, because all these Oklahoma things are open investigation, except for the man that was killed in the dispensary. All these other things that are happening, all you have to do, people, is kind of like Google somebody in Florida with a date. Is Google shootings at Oklahoma City dispensaries, and I will tell you that the list is endless. Mm-hmm. And so, that's why I felt really important to want to tell people how to protect their cannabis business. So thanks for dropping those jewels. I know we sound a little bit like conspiracists, because we're like, oh, how do we have abolished the police, but we need the police kind of thing. So not to sound like that, but
listen, I actually got to take a page out. Dr. Rachel Knox, Dr. Janice Knox. It's not about it being a conspiracy theory. We know there's conspiracies in our government. Here are a couple facts right now. We've got a government that has a patent for the health benefits of cannabinoids and cannabis, but those cannabinoids and cannabis are still a Schedule 1 designation, which means no health benefits at all. That's a conspiracy. Okay. I'm sorry. What makes it bad is us saying conspiracy theories, and a theory is a hypothesis that generally doesn't have any enough grounded information that people can make it out like it's something that's fake. But we got real receipts here. We got 50 years of receipts, 100 years of receipts that cannabis criminalization was racially biased in intent. And so that's not a conspiracy. That's not a theory. That's a conspiracy. So we got to call it what it is. And so what I will say is I have a hypothesis based on the narrative around abolish the police. Notice I didn't, or defund the police. I didn't say any of that. I said divest. I'm a businesswoman, and the police is another entity that a multi-trillion-dollar government needs, right, to have a line item for law enforcement. It just don't need to be 80% of my budget. It don't need to be for me to get SWAT level machinery like I'm in Iraq or what have you, or the military, to go into someone's home. And that's what happened with people like Breonna Taylor and the like. So it's like, we've just got to be making more sense about our investment in certain areas, why we invested so heavily there and not so much in education, or not so much in community investment. Right. And so that's the narrative that we're fighting against versus the reality. And I think there are some police officers that are certainly feeding into it, but there are also some that straight up they didn't agree about legalization to begin with, period. It is, and they don't want to work that beat, and they get the notification. They like, listen,
so what?
Sorry for them, man, right? Like, they shouldn't be selling weed, like you get a lot of that, and that's completely incorrect at this point.
Okay, facts. And the police is really taking the line item out of many other people who work in our government's books, because on hot topic number 2, which we're about to go to right now, we are finding out that the GOP said poor people cannot be patients, period. Period. So what does that mean? So a Republican congressional lawmaker introduced a bill that sums up, basically says that people that are receiving federal financial assistance should not be able to use marijuana dispensaries, medical or adult use.
I am not shocked, but let's dig into this because, honey, this is what our country does, unfortunately. And this is why I was just like, you know what? I'm going to see what this whole government thing is about, because little things like this, you're like, where does that come from? First of all, just because I'm on any type of government support, whether it's disability or public assistance, you are not the boss of me. It's a support that, by the way, I am owed that ability to do so because I pay taxes to even provide the revenue. Government don't get no revenue from anywhere else but the people. Okay, let's be clear. That's where the government makes money the most. The people, and then there's private partnerships, and they're getting it from private entities as well. But by and large, it is our money that is circulating through. That's why you got to deal with the IRS. That's why there are taxes, state, federal, local, all of that. That's revenue. And all that is being used in a, again, circular way to be supporting of our most needed individuals. And so for people to feel like you get to tell me what to do and how to do with my money, first of all, if it's not a food stamp, right, meaning that it's only supposed to be used for food, then you don't get to tell me to do with my cash. If I want to take my Visa stamp TANF and use the ATM in the strip club, honey, I can still do that, okay? Yeah. That's what bothers me. It's like, oh, you want to ban the marijuana dispensaries, but they can still use it in the strip club, in the liquor store. What?
Right. And it shouldn't be policed that hard anyway, because that's not even what our country is about, really, because we're not policing y'all when y'all doing y'all private public agreements.
Or your private islands.
Ooh, realty. Well, we gotta get into that. That's the next topic. So let's learn more about this legislation, which is sponsored by Representative Tom Rice from South Carolina, who don't even got no cannabis. So how he know what people are doing? And then co-sponsored by Jackie, Lord, whatever her name is, Walworski, out of Indiana. Who also ain't got no cannabis. Basically, they've been pushing during all of the MORE Act process to block low-income individuals from using it. And so they was like, oh, y'all not putting that in? Well, we're going to make our own bill. And Rice really thought he was doing something when he went to Marijuana Moment to tell them that he believes it would be a misuse of taxpayers' dollars to allow folks receiving welfare to use the funds for marijuana purchases. And in the memo, honey, it would prevent them from using how they would be able to track it. In the memo is saying that they would prevent any welfare benefit cards to be able to purchase cannabis through their ATM systems in the store.
So you giving me a Visa card logo that I can't use for real. Again, it's like I said, it's policing, but also it's policing in a very selective way. I could still use that card in the strip club, though. The strip club ain't medicine. I mean, well, depending on who you're talking to, okay? But the point is, I'm not trying to judge anybody's lifestyle, but to put cannabis in a separate thing and not at all look at some of the debauchery that happens after hours in a club that you can use is any ATM. If you wanted to go to the bar and bust out your card, the way they look at it now, first of all, they're lucky that you ain't getting Monopoly money food stamps anymore. Okay, let me just take it back to East New York right quick for you. But let's be clear. Now we have these cards, and now these government entities have done partnerships with the likes of Visa and MasterCard so that you can make it so that if you're getting government assistance of any kind, if you got the cash kind, you can use the cash wherever you want. Period. Right. You can withdraw wherever you want. Plus, people ain't stupid. And, there's always a hustler going to figure out how to get around something. So, I can't use the ATM inside. Guess what? I don't want to anyway. Most people trying to save their ducats is going in knowing that they got to have cash, and they're not trying to pay $7 at the ATM fee. Definitely not on their EBT TANF card. Okay. The next thing I'm just being real. The next thing I struggle with is, again, just the hypocrisy that they would have this as a separate bill when we are at the very same time talking about the medicinal benefits. If there ain't people that need the medicinal benefits of cannabis more than low income mofos, I don't know what we are doing here. Then that's the most vulnerable population. You know,
Right.
I'm on a soapbox a bit because I come from the hood, and I know that this is who we're trying to free. Really,
Right.
when we say free the people, we talk about this same group. When we talk about the laws that were changed and made in New York so that people who are in public housing do not have any penalty for their cannabis use, this is the opposite of that.
Right. Right. Exactly. It's definitely the opposite of that. And even how the name is, it's like what movie are we really in? The name is called Welfare for Needs, Not for Weeds Act.
What? So
That's the name.
remember we was talking about the marketing plan of these laws. So that sounds very much like the marketing plan, and then, they try to name the bills now more and more. That's why MORE Act, the House especially, they like to really brand stuff, right? So that's why the MORE Act is an acronym that means something. This is hilarious. And you know what? We need to roast the F out of it. I'm going to look at the bill because honestly, nobody got time. I'm worried about the Cannabis Administration and the Opportunity Act in the Senate. I don't got time for this BS bill in the House right now that's only trying to limit our rights when we're trying to free the plant. But it's always good to know what the ops are doing. That's what the ops are doing. They're worried. They know that cannabis is going to legalize. That's what this also signals. They know that it's going to legalize. It does have bipartisan support. So they like, okay, well, guess what? We're going to still try our best to make sure that the support is something that only is for the wealthy or those who are well off already. That's the problem I have here.
Okay, facts. I mean, that lets you know already that, yes, they are trying to figure out the banking. And you're right about that. I can't really even, when I read this, I was absolutely disgusted. I'm like, okay, so low income aren't patients either. They have all these ailments. They shouldn't be able to get medical marijuana that has a patent on it.
That is a problem. And you know what? We'll have to keep watching this. I'm definitely very, very interested in making sure that we follow up. We might have to do a deep dive as well. This is the reason why we have to stay vigilant. I mean, it's the reason why we have to stay active. It's the reason why we have this podcast, is because these are the moves that are being made, and it's not going to make it to general population media, right? Like, they're not looking. Oh, yes, they dropped. Everybody was talking about Schumer, Booker, and Wyden primarily because they went on Today Show. These people are not trying to go through the Today Show at all. It sounds like you got an extra guest on the show today, honey.
Oh my God, my dog is tripping. She's like, you didn't feed me. I'm like, I'm bad. I was trying to get
you get on the show. She want to be on the show today.
She want to be on the show. No, she can't. She cannot be on the show. She's probably really hungry. Because she's like nipping at my toes, you guys. I'm so sorry. Welcome to live TV. Biscuit has made a lot of appearance on my IG, so if you want to follow me there, you can see her. No, she is over me,
man. Oh my goodness.
Okay, she has a lot of personality. Little Chihuahua mix, but yeah, she was tripping. So I was like on my phone, Elijah, come get the dog. She's like barking at me. She barks at you too. If she'll talk to you if she wants something, you're not paying her attention, she's gonna bark at you.
It do sound like your dog. Anyway.
Well, I'll be barking at these politicians too. Yes, stop targeting low income people. Stop hating poor people, period. And I think we need to really have a campaign surrounding stop hating low income people. We also need to have a campaign around getting these MSOs together. So let's move on to hot topic number 3, which is all about Florida. Yes, honey, we go from Oklahoma to Florida. I know this whole episode is crazy or whatever, but Florida is really dealing with some issues. These regulators are up in arms right now because they just don't know what to do. And, I do think people have confusion around what regulators are and lawmakers. So we'll circle back to that so you can explain it to us. But what's really happening in Florida is that they claim that they do not want their medical marijuana market to be dominated by only a few key people. So they ended up creating a policy within the law that says that 5% of the companies licensed to sell medical marijuana may not be able to buy any other part of another medical marijuana company in the state. And why does that get so tricky? Because we know Florida's medical marijuana, and if we don't know, now you know, Florida's medical marijuana program is a vertically integrated only program. So they have to be able to cultivate, manufacture, transport, and distribute.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I'm so tired of talking about Florida and what they're doing wrong here. It is almost like you're confused over how to maneuver when you have created monopolies in the market by your laws. The regulators can't change the law, though. So just to take a step back, as y'all already know, I am a regulator and I implement the law. I interpret the law. I create administrative regulatory policies around what the law says, but I can't change the law. As a regulator, I can influence the law. I can go back and say, this ish ain't working. I do that. I do that a lot. I do that in other states as well. I'm like, listen, don't do that.
Okay.
Am I writing that law just like that? Don't do that again.
Right.
And so that's in some ways what Cannabis Regulators of Color Coalition was really formed for. It was like, how do we learn faster? Because this ain't the way. We people don't know how to do whole intricate hairstyles from YouTube and learning faster. We gotta have to do that with the cannabis industry,
Okay.
and certainly with regulatory framework. So I'm like, even if I have to do DIYs, conversations with people, but we can't change the law. So it starts with making sure the laws aren't janky. And that means if you're interested even in being a regulator, you should still be an advocate. You have to be an advocate inside, outside. There are rules around the way you can officially advocate for something, and that you can't officially lobby or not, but at the end of the day, you can still be an advocate internally. You can say, I'm an advocate for a good program. I'm an advocate for happy consumers in the program, and I'm an advocate for a thriving industry and revenue. And guess what, honey? That ain't with limited licenses. That ain't with continuing to have the same big industry folks, and I say just cannabis industry folks, come in with their money and consolidate, buy up everything. And I think this rule was put in place because they knew what was going to happen, but it would also not be required as much if the market was more readily open and more available to everyone.
Okay. And they're really kind of confused, the regulators over there, because they're trying to interpret this law. And what's happening right now is that there is a hedge fund. So just so you guys know, there's multiple parts into these cannabis business, especially when it gets having to be like all the way vertically integrated. It's a lot of parts. Mm-hmm. And their hedge fund is called Gotham Green Partners. And they are trying to purchase a cannabis dispensary license location called Grow Healthy. And now the thing about Gotham Green Partners is it's a hedge fund, so it's just holding stuff, and they hold men. They hold men to the point where if they wanted to, they have to have approval of certain nominations due on the company's board of directors, right? They have access, and hey, you're on the board. This is what you're supposed to do. This is the vote. That's how Gotham works right now. Well, if you don't know, there are 352 dispensaries in Florida. That is not a lot, you guys. And MedMen has 11 and Grow Healthy has 17. So that would mean that they would be able, if they were to purchase this Grow Healthy, which also is up under a hedge fund. So this is where it gets confusing, because it's just like, well, what the hell? It's under its own hedge fund called...
Don't worry about what it's called. It's under its own hedge fund. And what
I don't want to pronounce it because it's retarded. Okay, or special. Sorry, it's special. But anyway, with none of that being said, it's another multi-state operator, and the regulators are going back to lawmakers, and they're like, "We're confused. We're not about to let this sale happen because that would mean they own way too many actual they own way too many they own way too many licenses in the state under two different names. So it is definitely a difficult situation. And I feel bad for the regulators, right? Because they're going back to the lawmakers like, okay, we're about to not approve this because this is what the law says and this is what's happening. And then we start digging deeper and, lawmakers is kind of like, it's Florida. It's Florida. Interpret it how you will. But it's also showing that Gotham Green has spent quite a few decades lobbying, especially in 2021, on what should they think happen with some of these laws.
Listen, first off, just to kind of circle back on the different names, I do think that we are sometimes the cannabis space, but also just generally in the wealth space, the names are a little sus. That's probably a better word. I know we're trying to phase out that other word in our lexicon, but New Yorkers is just like, it's very hard. But
yes.
It's very sus, yes. And so all of these moves are not untypical or atypical rather of big companies. I think the biggest issue comes back to me, just Florida is a closed market. And therefore is like, what are we talking about? You trying to keep another Goliath from being in your market. Okay, got that. But you already created a market that's really for Goliaths. First of all, requiring the vertically integration, right? That's a hefty lift. Not having any other licensing in the horizontal of just like within the supply chain one off. And then the second being that there's limited licenses and the fees to get one, ridiculous. Mm-hmm. The freaking application at one point alone was a $60,000 fee included in that. That is also ridiculous. But by the way, that is revenue for the state for the program. This is also a common thing that's happening throughout other states. So it's happening and we pay attention to it in Oregon. We don't prevent it. It is something that Shalene Tito's Parabola Center has been calling out about the different federal bills. How do we prevent these things from happening? And it isn't just about, you can't have a certain amount of ownership. Across the board, I think it's about how many more businesses can you have in the market. The more you do, the less that feels like a threat. And then, what is your purpose of the ownership? These people just buying and buying. This is not like they're like, but we're incubating equity businesses. We are ensuring the diversity of the space. Yeah, absolutely not. You own MedMed, and you also doing dealings with, big companies like Ianthus. All you're doing is trying to buy the current medium to small MSOs and ensure that you are now a bigger and bigger conglomerate. It isn't about equity, in my opinion, and I think that that's what needs to be worked on here.
It's not even about policy, because if they were smart, they would have it open more, right? Not just vertically integrated. It'd be a whole bunch of little different tiers of licenses, if they really want to make the money and not just be gatekeeping the cannabis. This feels like they gatekeeping the weeds, y'all, and I don't like that.
Well, anytime that has happened, we know the market is not good for the consumers, period. And we know it doesn't do well. We know that the legacy market lingers in a way that's not positive. I am okay with the legacy market lingering in a way that's positive if it means you're not still arresting people and we're not criminalizing it. Like, you just need to come and bring it. You want to compete with the legacy market, then bring it. In Florida, what they're doing is they are basically like the movie Gladiator, where they stabbed him and then send him out to do the fight. That's what they're doing with the legacy market. They're like, no, we still arresting you. We still, persecuting. We still racially biased profiling, but we got the legal market over here. So you either join the legal market and participate, or you deal with that as a backlash or a collateral consequence. And I'm not here for that at all.
Right. And you got to protect yourself. You got to protect your business and you got to protect your space because cannabis is happening no matter what, especially in Florida because they are alligators out there and there's some sharks in New York, honey. And so we really, really wanted to talk about in our main topic about how to protect yourself, your cannabis business, especially how to protect your cannabis business. It's so important. We started off the episode talking about Oklahoma and other states dealing with burglary and shootings and stuff like that. We're also talking about how the GOP is ready to, basically kick patients out of cannabis markets because they have federal assistance. So we try to figure out how we're going to protect ourselves because these people is tripping. And so first, how to protect your cannabis business is really important. We talk about it in How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry. There is a little section because it's one of those things people never actually think about. I know I didn't think about it until the first time I met a retired police officer working in security in cannabis.
Mm-hmm. Oh, those are my favorites, right? That's what I mean by having competency in the industry. Those are the police officers that you bring back to train your law enforcement in your municipality because they are willing to at least listen to another police officer. I come in there, they give me a little bit of play, but I don't carry a gun and I don't do their line of work, so the respect level goes down. But to your point, I have learned a lot from people working in security. We've learned a lot from just being consultants in the industry, helping set up businesses and recognizing there are challenges as we are doing it. And it isn't what you think of the challenges, right? We are not just talking about physical security, but it's other stuff too. And so let's start breaking it down. What we got first here.
Yes, so we're gonna get in digitally. It's really important digitally because I've been seeing a lot of campaigns lately on bring this company back, bring this company back, bring them back, especially on Instagram. Because I feel like every time they try to do one of their little updates, it basically is like get 3 cannabis companies off, and so digitally is the first and easiest place to protect yourself. And it all starts with procuring your digital real estate. That means get your name 5-6 different times spelled with a dot, without a dot, underscore, just protect your name, right? Buy your website. That is the closest thing to your name, especially if it's available for a reasonable amount. Like, even if you don't have a website, just buy it. GoDaddy will keep charging you, boo. I promise.
Yes. We have URLs that we don't have for years at this point, unused, but still protected.
Right. And so, procure your digital real estate on all channels, not just one channel, all channels.
I think that those are really great lessons. The key thing you say is multi-channel. A lot of people are not really thinking multi-channel. They only have the bandwidth for content on one thing. But I do feel like no matter what, even if you only have the bandwidth to do social media, please get a URL. Please get a URL and connect your Gmail or connect an email to that URL. That's like the bare minimum to be in business, in my opinion, and to protect your business. And a lot of people will start with name of the business at Gmail, at Hotmail, Yahoo, whatever, but definitely it's so easy now. It's a minimal fee for just one email. Usually info@ is perfect. And in some ways it shows you're serious, but also recognizing that you're locking down the URL and not just one, right? If it's accidentally misspelled kind of thing, you want to lock down as many as you can. I felt blessed to get the weedhead.com, but also recognizing that we needed the weedhead.org, .net, so don't sleep on those as well. In general, I definitely want to make sure that we just, be clear that the digital space is actually the place where you're the most at risk with your brand, with your imagery, with your posts.
Right.
Even being more clear about what you post, protect your brand. You may be reposting something thinking you're just sharing news, right? And all of a sudden, now you're getting blown up because it's the right topic trending and it's the right time trending. And now all of a sudden you are getting the backlash like you did it yourself or you wrote it yourself. yourself. So be careful about just auto reposting without looking at the content, and be very, very clear about protecting the website too. I don't like shopping unsecured websites. That little lock in the corner of the URL, that means something. Get a security certificate for your website. It is an extra fee, but it actually makes people more willing to read your blogs, shop your marketplaces, engage with your site, log in, provide my information to become a member of a website. I'm not doing that if it's unsecured. So if that lock does look open for your URL, you're missing a lot of traffic converting, because a lot of people feel that way, especially now in the COVID times where we're doing everything digitally.
And we know how quickly we could get hacked, child.
Yes.
Which is like when they don't even have the security certificate, my computer is like, oh, abandoned site. Abandoned site. I'm like, dang, so yes, I agree. And having those multiple channels are absolutely important. So in person is another way there's some other ways to protect your cannabis business. Security has to be your top priority, whether it is a guard, a safe lock, a absolute third party security, whatever you have to do. If you got to go consult somebody on what security even means, so some people don't even know what security means, that's what you need to do, especially whether you have a dispensary or you cultivate this or your delivery service. And even for me as I do bigger and bigger cannabis events, I tend to only book places that have security. I'm like, okay, well, how y'all make sure we got the right people coming up in here? Because you can get your event crashed and you don't know who's crashing the event.
That's true. Especially when you're doing influencing over the internet, you become a bit more known, especially if you're building brand. And I definitely think that in person, like when we were at National Cannabis Festival, we had security for the Duchess. She's walking around with huge OOs in a big old, glorious wine glass cup or whatever. Point is it wasn't like she was just walking around the festival. They was on the train. They was traveling around DC, and she wasn't putting the weed away. And that sometimes can be a problem, right? It can incite a problem. But I think in general, in person, the biggest challenge that a lot of cannabis companies are having is that they have a lot of cash on hand, or the merchandise is really valuable. But the good news is, for most states, security is required as part of the application process. So you're going to absolutely need to do the research on it. If you're looking to get a license in New York, you're going to have a consultant. I like to shout out Forseti Protections up in Buffalo area, Western New York. They do work the entire New York state and probably beyond, but they are minority owned, Hispanic men. They met with us when we were working on various projects up in Buffalo, and it was really helpful to get their insight coming from military and law enforcement background. And I definitely was shocked again at how expensive it can be just to lock down a facility, how much we don't think about even as an event planner, me as a speaker, which way I should be leaving or coming in. And nowadays, when you're talking about cannabis equity, sometimes people deciding that they think that you are someone that they can come for. And so being aware of your surroundings, even as you think about the speaking events, pop-up events, we're having, a lot of them now that consumption spaces are starting to be talked about. So again, I don't want to do no fear mongering, because guess what? You could get shot up in the club in Atlanta tomorrow, honey, without weed. But it's still one of those things I concern myself as a regulator, because I see that those are challenges that our operators are having. And in person, there is something enticing about this ability to have access to it, that people will try you. And you want to make sure that you're covered, whether you're doing delivery, distribution. That's basically, for some states, it's an armored vehicle. Right. And we talk yes, we talk about that in the book, that if you're going to go into distribution, don't think that you're going to be able to get your little coupe and you throwing your stuff in the car. No, they want now video attached to it. Sometimes, again, also the temperature of what you keep your cannabis, whether it's nursery size baby plants, or it's already bud that you're selling. You still don't want it to be in a hot car like an Arizona or in the elements of any kind. So those are things that you got to do. Just say it's not just protecting yourself from people, but protecting yourself from the elements, protecting yourself in general, in person, protecting your product. One other thing that I constantly am talking about is the legal protections and administrative protections. You mentioned this already. If you are trying to be vertically integrated in most states, you actually are talking about a lot of businesses all put in one. And that's where I think, especially businesses of color getting in, you get excited about your one LLC, and it's a lot of work administrative just to run one LLC, trust me. But one of the things that I feel a more sophisticated protection of businesses in the cannabis space is how many entities you can build that help protect the brand of the one that's plant touching specifically. How many entities you can build to support the brand that is plant touching. If you're doing advocacy, you need an LLC and you need a 501c3, honey. Right. So it's one of those things that
most people don't know that. Because we done seen some businesses. We was confused.
Yes, absolutely. The business model didn't make sense. And so I definitely agree with you. People ask us all the time, why do we have so many businesses? But they complement itself, and we can work our family of businesses in a coalition effort, a concerted effort, and it can be very strategic. The nonprofit was essential. It's actually something I learned when I was 14 years old. With our mother started her own nonprofit in our house, and then eventually she started a church. You understand that those taxes look very different from what you're doing with your LLC or what you're doing with your S Corp or C Corp, whatever. It looks different from what you're doing with a church or a nonprofit entity. And we can't be afraid to start multiple entities and actually have them working in concert. So I'm constantly saying legally, that is a way to build entities to protect yourself. It also blocks people out. So for example, somebody might like your name and they decide I'm gonna do it different and it's gonna be a different type of business. No, I'm gonna make sure my name is covered in every type of business. It don't matter what I want to do tomorrow, I will have that entity available to me. And it is investing money because you have to pay your fees and keep your business up to date, but it is worth it. And we've had people definitely point out the benefits of our different companies that we have just as family members, and being able to, again, to work those in a complexly integrated way so that we get, as Dr. Rachel and Cam, we would say, an entourage benefit effect. The sum of it is a lot more than just 1 + 1 = 2. So that's one way. And the last thing I will say legally, and I talk about this all the time, and we are very much connected with Jessica Gonzalez around this intellectual property protection. Not enough people, and everybody and their mama literally got a canna, a green. There was actually a report that came out of Canada talking about how so many people and entities that are licensed have the same exact names.
Creativity. Where is it at? It's where's capitalism.
But you know what? Why are we not surprised? Because guess what? There's no multicultural element in these markets. There's no diversity. So without diversity, there's creativity. Wow. I'll be honest, we the salt of the earth. We know that. And trendsetting. And so it's like, let's be clear. The culture is diverse. And so we bring in a lot of corporate to this, and corporate is like, I've got a clever idea. We can call ourselves Canopy Growth. And it's like, okay, but there's 18 canopies. Right. Now, granted, they got enough money to stop out all the canopies, right? There's also many, many growths or flowers, or, I could go on, but green, canopy, flowers, there was a list of them. And we're talking about hundreds of businesses that have the same name. Not nary one actually have filed for their trademarking. And a lot of people believe because it's not federally legal that the U.S. Trademark Office was not really responding. And definitely when we started the Weed Head, I got that experience because I did all of that. I was like, okay, listen, this is what we're going to do. I haven't heard back from them since. But now, you know what? Now we know that it's being talked about on a federal level. We just saw Simply Pure finally got their mark. And they're a dispensary. Congratulations to Wanda James on that. And so that's telling me the tide is turning and you guys need to protect your brand. Come up with clever stuff. Do not use current mainstream brands to name your stuff because we've already reported people coming and suing and coming and get their paper for you biting. But be clever, be innovative, then protect it with trademarking. It's worth the money.
Right. I know that's right. Well, we done dropped a lot of facts on y'all. So this is better. This is like an in-person version, but we also have those facts on our book as well, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry, which is like really important because at the end of the day, it opens your eyes to all these other things that go within your SOP. So I definitely feel like you guys need to check that out. I'm glad we talked about this with all the crazy things happening. I mean, I don't want to see another like big cannabis company's page going away for no apparent reason at all. You know what I'm saying? Stop reporting us. But, you know, we got to start using our active accounts. And, you know, in person is really, really important. And so is that legal. Okay. Because if you could prove you got an LLC, then that's real. You know, somebody said, I saw a tweet that said, just because you put an LLC behind your name doesn't mean you got an LLC. And that took me out. So
but that's how I feel about the trademark too. There's a little bit more protection with the TM than the LLC, to your point. You really do got to set up the LLC. Same way you got to set up the 501c3. These are real entities and there is work. But if you can't do it yourself, that's where it's like, find the people. I'm a person that I'm going to use my network. And so if I didn't know, you know I am. And I'm going to pay my network too. So don't even like, I'm not saying it like, oh, find free work. I said find the right people to do the work. And you want to pay your network. That's called cooperative economics. That's what we supposed to be doing. And I think that we need more coalition, especially among Black, Indigenous, and Latinx businesses, because it is already happening with the predominantly white businesses. Their coalition is the industry at this point. To your point, I know that's right. About what we were describing with that, what it was the Gotham, right? That is their coalition.
Right. In multiple states too. They got more coalitions than some of these, you know, nonprofit organization chapters, you know. So but thank you so much. You know us. We always gonna drop the tea and keep it realer than real. And thank you for the crazy, you know, keeping the audience engaged during my crazy time with me and my little doggy. She did come up because she wanted to be up here. Yeah, she wanted to be here. So she did come. She wanted to sit on my lap because I did not do what I was supposed to do before I got on the stage. So she children. Yes, I know, my little fur animal, y'all. So thank you guys. And make sure you watch She Blaze anytime. You could binge us on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, anywhere, honey.
And of course, you can find me at Deshita Dawson. I tweet a lot more now, honey. And you can find me at Deshita Dawson on Instagram. So it's either or. Or, of course, you can find the Weedhead and Company at theweedhead.com. We are always available through all of our channels. As we were talking about it, we are protected in that regard. If you look up DeshitaDawson.com, it's going to take you to theweedhead.com. It's that level of protection. But yes, this was a great episode. We learned so much. I know I did, and I got a lot of digging. I'm definitely going to check out more about that. Low income patients can't use their benefits to get cannabis. No.
That's from people that don't have medical marijuana in their state. They don't even got flower. Like people in South Carolina get arrested for nothing.
Exactly. I mean, I know not to rehash, but when you said that, it didn't even hit me until after the segment was over, where I was like, you're right. They're literally trying to cock block other states that
Right.
other people's lives. You're not even
Right.
trying to impact your own constituents. You're
Right.
impacting other people's constituents. I can't. And so on that note, that's why we do what we do, because this is my therapy, y'all. I have to actually work with these people every day.
And not cuss them out. LOL.
And not cuss them out. Oh, thank God for cannabis. They should be thanking too.
Okay. I know that's right. Well, you guys have a great weekend. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.